Everyone, I'm Elizabeth Voss, Editor-in-Chief of Disobedient Media, and I'm here to bring you one of our articles today. And unfortunately, I've run out of daylight, so the lighting in here is going to be a little bit off. But I will do my best, and we will just get through this, and I'm hoping that my audio issues will be somewhat fixed by now. The article I'm going to read to you today is titled Mueller's Investigation of Farce Files Joke Indictment Against Russian Trolls. I published this a couple of days ago, and it's gotten, some positive feedback, so I wanted to make an audio version for you all. And I will just get right into it. I wrote, if one needed proof that Mueller's investigation was an utter farce, they were in for a treat this morning when the Deputy Attorney General announced the indictment of 13 Russian trolls for allegedly interfering in the 2016 presidential election by posting on social media accounts. Laying Mueller's disregard for the First Amendment aside, the indictment is blatantly hypocritical in light of the active social media interference by pro-Clinton David Brock and his multi-million-dollar efforts to correct the record. And breaking away from the article for one moment, I just want to, apologize in advance that I can't stop laughing during this entire article because it is so ridiculous. And a couple of the comments I got in response to publishing this article were, this indictment is a nothing burger, why are you reporting on it? And that's the entire point of reporting on it, is to point out that it's nothing. Because the mainstream media is attempting to portray this as some sort of major deal when there is absolutely nothing there. Hence my constant laughter when discussing it. Okay, so the indictment alleges that beginning in or around June 2014, the organization obscured its conduct by operating through a number of Russian entities, including Internet Research LLC, and then it lists a number of LLCs. But, it's hilarious that they make that sound so ominous, but there's no connection whatsoever to Putin, the Kremlin, the Russian government, or any other entity that would be something that would be nationally interested in interfering with an election. Anyway, the indictment further alleges that the organization sought, in part, to conduct what it called information warfare against the United States of America through fictitious U.S. personas on social media platforms and other internet-based media. According to the indictment, the co-conspirators engaged in, quote, operations primarily intended to communicate derogatory information about Hillary Clinton, to denigrate other candidates such as Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, and to support Bernie Sanders and then candidate Donald Trump. And if you want to hear the entire indictment read to you, if you'd like to hear all of the laughable information in the indictment, then I believe H.A. Goodman has done a really good job of reading the entire thing. Thank God I'm not going to try and do that. I would probably just be in hysterical fits of laughter before I could finish it. Anyway, the indictment represents the latest mutation of Russian interference allegations that have dragged on for over a year. As this author previously noted, the definition of Russian interference has shifted from unsubstantiated claims of Russian hacking to Russian collusion, and finally to the mysterious allegations of Russian social media trolling. And, we had the previous iteration of this was the $40,000 in Facebook ads that were, I believe, mostly about puppies. Anyway, the Washington Post reported in 2015 that David Brock's Correct the Record would work directly with the Clinton campaign, testing the legal limits of campaign finance in the process, and that the Washington Post said that they were testing the legal limits of campaign finance, I think says a lot about the nature of that operation. So how to correct the record skirt campaign finance law? The Washington Post tells us by relying on a 2006 Federal Election Commission regulation that declared the content posted online for us for free, such as blogs, is off limit from such regulation. And Post Online, Brock's PAC certainly did. They disseminated information about Clinton on their website and also through Facebook and Twitter accounts, officials said. And as we all know, that was barely even the start of their operations online. Time reported the opinion of a lawyer at the Campaign Legal Center who characterized Correct the Record as creating new ways to undermine campaign regulation. Meanwhile, the New York Times detailed the outrage machine that Brock and fellow Clinton supporter Peter Dow had created. Peter Dow sat with his team at a long wooden table last week, pushing the buttons that activate Mrs. Clinton's outrage machine. Mr. Dow's operation, called ShareBlue, had published the article on Mr. Trump's comment on its website and created the accompanying hashtag. They will put that pressure right on the media outlets in a very intense way. Mr. Dow, the chief executive of ShareBlue, said of the Twitter army he had galvanized by the thousands, and that's his words. It's interesting that 13 Russian Twitter trolls will be indicted, but the thousands of Russian Twitter trolls, the thousands of Peter Dow's Twitter trolls are just fine. So going further, the New York Times details fervently the $2 million budget of Dow's ShareBlue and admits the intent of the entire operation is interference in the outcome of the 2016 presidential election in favor of Hillary Clinton. And again, it's interesting that $40,000 in Facebook ads were enough to topple $2 million of Peter Dow's budget. So the New York Times describes this whole operation, quote, beyond creating a boisterous echo chamber, the real metric of success for ShareBlue, which Mr. Brock again says has a budget of $2 million supplied by his own political donors, is getting Ms. Clinton elected. Mr. Dow's role is deploying a band of committed, outraged followers to harangue Mrs. Clinton's opponents. So, just that on its face, it's so hypocritical. It's absolutely beyond words, even for somebody who spends a lot of their time writing. So anyway, the New York Daily News puts the matter most bluntly, quote, Hillary Clinton camp now paying online trolls to attack anyone who disparages her online. The LA Times described the active election interference, quote, it is meant to appear to be coming organically from people and their social media networks in a groundswell of activism, when in fact it is highly paid and highly tactical. Again, I'm at a loss for words. I'm just going to continue with the article. Despite the millions of dollars poured into a pro-Clinton outrage machine bent on her support, she inexplicably lost the election to Donald Trump, a fact which seems to have not sunk in for the former First Lady and Secretary of State, even now. But why bring up this apparently old news in the face of Mueller's latest mockery of the American judicial process and the First Amendment? Because it reveals, in the words of the legacy press themselves, that by definition, Mueller's circus has zero interest in campaign integrity and election integrity and is solely interested in getting scalps for Clinton and for the unelected powers that she represented, from Goldman Sachs to the military-industrial complex to a lot of others. Despite obvious hypocrisy, given the actions of ShareBlue and David Brock's Correct the Record, corporate media ignored all double standards and attempted to report on Russian Twitter trolling with a straight face. Business Insider wrote, quote, Russian Twitter trolls tried to bury or spin negative Trump news just before election. As if that wasn't exactly what Correct the Record spent millions doing for Clinton. The double standards applied to Clinton for her benefit go beyond hypocrisy. Many have claimed that the constantly metamorphosing allegations of Russian interference represent an insidious effort to silence dissent and anti-establishment political discourse in total. For example, by turning third-party, anti-establishment or conservative voices into Russians by proxy of their shared opposition to Clinton. And again, I don't believe that that is a conservative issue or a liberal or a progressive or a green issue. Whether you are Diamond and Silk or whether you are H.A. Goodman or whether you are Tim Black or anyone else, it doesn't matter what side of the spectrum you're on politically. It matters that if you are anti-establishment, then you will be silenced thanks to our Russian hysteria that we have going on right now. So by converting legitimate American free speech into insidious Russian bots, Russian trolls, Russian networks, a pretext is created to silence dissent across the board, across all political sides, libertarians, socialists, whoever, you're all silenced. Without the Russian interference circus, the efforts to breach the First Amendment would be overtly authoritarian and would be inexcusable even by the most corrupt establishment media standards. Can you imagine if you had these types of crackdowns that we see now on Twitter and Facebook without the impetus of the Russian narrative? It's gold for the establishment. That's why it continues, despite what a farce it clearly is. So the results of this clampdown on free and effective speech have manifested in censorship crackdowns across large social media platforms, including Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, with Twitter admitting to having actively censored roughly 48% of tweets that included the DNC emails hashtag. It seems that anyone with an opinion the establishment doesn't like is liable to be memory holed. And that is the end of the article. If you visit the article that I will link in the description of this video, you can also see that I've hyperlinked in that last paragraph the previous articles that Disobedient Media has written on Twitter and YouTube and Facebook and the censorship on those platforms individually, because there have been massive crackdowns on each one of those platforms, mostly in thanks to this Russian hysteria. And I think it's a very serious subject, but I'm kind of almost thankful that Mueller made such a joke of himself, because it was kind of like a lighthearted way to end the week last week. So, I hope that you enjoyed listening to that. I hope that you will be back with us once again the next time that I do this type of thing. And thank you so much for joining me. My name is Elizabeth Voss. I am Editor-in-Chief of Disobedient Media. You can find me on Twitter at Elizabeth, Leavos. You can find Disobedient Media on Twitter at Disobedient News. I'm also on Steemit, because Facebook has been severely censoring myself and other independent media, and so a lot of us have converted over to Steemit. And even if you stay on Facebook and, like us, follow us on Facebook on our Disobedient Media page there, I would really, really, truly encourage you to make a Steemit account. And I won't go on too much of a rant about why. I've written about it before. I've made videos on it before. But yeah, it's a really great way to reverse the establishment social media platform model. Anyway, thank you so much again. I will see you next time.